Hello, it's our November NSDOAF series of speakers, and we are so pleased to welcome Alexa Hamilton. I will let Renee introduce her in just a few moments. Thank you everyone for signing on today. We had a little computer glitch about the invitation, so for those of you who got it, thank you so much. Thank you to every one of you for being here. And Renee, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam President National. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you. I'm very, very excited today for our speaker. Today we have with us Dr. Alexis Hamilton. She's an assistant professor and extension specialist at Virginia Tech in their Food Science and Technology department. Her research program identifies evidence-based approaches to enhance food safety while preserving quality for food manufacturers, and the findings of which she shares through her extension program that equips food producers of all sizes with the resources they require to make science-based decisions about food safety and quality in their operations. I can speak firsthand that Dr. Hamilton is just awesome, and we cannot wait to hear her presentation today, because I do believe I am very biased because I'm very proud of this young lady. She is my oldest daughter, and she's just out there living the dream. So without further ado, Dr. Hamilton, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. I'm really very excited to be here today. I want to say good afternoon to everybody. If you're on the Pacific time zone, good lunchtime. But I'm really pumped to get to share with you all today a little bit about me, a little bit about my program. We're going to talk about a couple of different things, but primarily we're going to talk about how my particular laboratory here at VT at Virginia Tech, which we affectionately call AHAM and the Food Safety Fam, how we help the industry make food safer from the farm all the way to the fork for anyone. It's kind of a tall order, but we like it. I'm on that title slide and in the bio that was used, you may have noticed that I'm listed as an assistant professor and an extension specialist. And before I tell you what that means, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about me and about how I arrived at introducing myself or having other people introduce me with this title. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I really didn't know that much about agriculture at the time. So little, in fact, that I think when I was in high school and we were getting ready to pick our class rings and getting to decide kind of what went on all sides of that ring, I picked a 4-leaf clover that had 4 H's on it. When I showed it to my mom, and was all excited about it, she asked why I picked it, and I said, well, our high school mascot is the Fighting Irish, and the 4-leaf clover is really the closest thing I could find to show school spirit. She then had to inform me that that particular 4-leaf clover was not about school spirit. It's actually for 4-H. So I didn't actually really get to know much about ag until I got to the University of Tennessee. And that's where I took my first class in food science. I remember it very well. It was about food processing and preservation, which is why it's so fun that I get to do the job I do now. I ended up falling in love with that so quickly and so completely, not just with the subject matter, but with how applied the major and the field was. It actually helped me. I got to see some really practical examples of how I could help farmers produce safe food. So I ended up not just getting my bachelor's in food science there, but I stayed for a while and I got my master's degree in food science at UT as well. And while I have a deep and great fondness for my alma mater, I did know that if I was really going to be helpful to the agricultural community, I needed to see more than how just Tennessee does ag. So I moved out to Washington State. Anyone who hopped on the call a little bit early heard my mom and I chatting a little bit about what that time was like and how different it is now. But I went to Washington State University, WSU, and that's where I got my Ph.D., also in food science. So I'm food science all the way down before I moved back here to the eastern side of the US. And now I've kind of put down roots up here in Blacksburg, Virginia at Virginia Tech. And here I have a really cool, I think, opportunity. I have what we call a joint appointment. So my job, I spend half my time doing research and half my time doing extension, which for me means that I have this really equitable and unique way that I get to serve people across the Commonwealth. And I'd like to share a bit more about it because it really does mean quite a bit to me. But my role here at VT is primarily revolving around three things. We help the food industry, however it is that we possibly can. We train students with our efforts to prepare the next and up and coming workforce. And then we spend time sharing the science across the community itself to help everyone that needs to understand and use that science be able to do so. And I personally, I do this in a variety of different ways, but I put some examples on the slide just so you have a little bit of context about practically what that means. I spend a lot of time writing grants to acquire funding to do this research that helps answer some of these questions about how to produce safe food. I also teach lots of different workshops to farmers and food industry professionals across the state. And really, we've expanded now, it's across the country to be able to do that. And then I very often, just at least about once a day, am providing one-on-one support with these individual businesses as they need it. So anytime they have issues come up or questions, I am there to help them as they need. But I also get to run a research laboratory. So that means that I get to mentor graduate students through the research projects that we design and develop. And I get to teach them how to be scientists, how to assimilate new information, how do we help people, how do we use that science to make what we call evidence-based or data-driven decisions about food safety. And I also have a couple of undergraduate students in my lab, which I'm very proud of. And sometimes I get to give guest lectures in their classes to be able to talk with them as well about what it means to help the food industry in this kind of role. So I spend quite a bit of time with my students talking about how to conduct research. And then we talk about science communication a lot. We talk a lot about how to share science in a way that people can understand so that they can see how that fits in with their life, with their jobs, with the things that they need to do to be able to produce safe food. If you're ever up this way in Blacksburg or Virginia at all, you may sometimes see me on the local news stations, or sometimes I'm on the radio, because I'll do interviews sometimes to help explain what's going on with food industry and with food safety in the industry today. I just did one recently. I did a couple about Halloween and food safety when it comes to candy, right? How long can you keep it? What kind of candy is safe to eat? All of that. And I think that's made the rounds a few times. It's always a bit of a surprise, right? To listen to the radio and then hear your own voice pop on. But I also get to do things like this, right? So I get to talk with, really, it's anyone who will listen, right? About food safety, what it is, how the food industry is actually working. And really, once you get to see a little bit of this, I hope you'll find that the food industry works very, very hard to be able to make food that is safe to eat, safe to save, and then safe to share. That's something that's very important to us across the entire food industry, or what we sometimes call the food supply chain. But the reason I get to do this is because I work for a land-grant university. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit. For anyone who's familiar, this will be old hat, but I'd like to direct everyone's attention to this picture on the right side of the screen. I know it's kind of tough to see. It's hard to get the whole US on one slide and have you be able to see the things on it. But what this picture shows is where each of these land-grant colleges and universities are across the state, across the US. So you'll notice that there's at least one in every single state, and that's because there has to be. In 1862, the Morrill Act was passed that gave or granted each state land that they could sell so they could generate enough money to establish a college on a piece of land that would teach agriculture, military science, and really other practical concepts to the members or the students of that state. The point of this land grant institution was to teach people practical concepts, because up until this point, our colleges and our universities were primarily built around a liberal arts education. And so what the Morrill Act tried to do was say, hey, we've got some people who are being missed in this liberal arts education, and we're missing some of that practical piece. So that's where the Morrill Act kind of comes in here. In 1887, the mission of each of these land-grant institutions was expanded to include a research component. So with the passage of this act, which we call the Hatch Act, these land-grant institutions now also have to try to create new knowledge to support their communities through conducting these research projects. So they ask these really important questions. They do the research to be able to answer them. And so now they've got to try to find the money, the time, the people, the resources to be able to do that in a way that helps the community. And what you may notice now, if you've been looking at that picture, there's 3 types of points on this map, and they're meant to designate the difference between 1862, 1890, and 1994 institutions. And this is because as these land-grant universities or colleges aim to kind of meet these requirements of the Hatch Act, they needed to find federal funding to support the work that they were doing. And in order to be eligible for that funding, these institutions were required to integrate Black and Indigenous members of their communities as well. But some institutions refused, and so secondary grants of money came through and were given to the states where the original land grants refused, and they were given money to begin what we sometimes call our 1890 or our 1994 institutions for the creation of colleges and universities that would serve these Black and Indigenous groups as well. Then in 1914, the final arm of what we now know as the land grant mission was established. With the passing of what we call the Smith-Lever Act, land grant institutions were now also charged with the responsibility to go out into the community and to teach these practical scientific concepts and skills that each of these communities needed, even if these people weren't enrolled as students at the college or the university itself. So I get to participate in my role. If you remember, I mentioned research and extension. I get to participate in these 2 components of the land grant mission here in my role at Virginia Tech. But how do I do that, right? How does someone who's a food safety expert like me, how do we do research that creates that new knowledge to support the agricultural industry, while also then going out and educating them about what they need to know? I found that what's easy for me, the way that I like to do this is 2 ways. First, I ask each of these food producers what it is that they care about, right? Or what their food safety priorities are. And then because I'm an academic, I check to see if they're right. I go and I check to see if their food safety knowledge, what they know, actually matches what they say their priorities are. And I want to talk a little bit more about practically how we do this. We recently published a paper in the Journal of Food Protection about what farmers' food safety priorities actually are. We surveyed producers who grow or who sell fresh produce across the entire US at all different levels of the industry. And if you look at that picture on the right, you can see, right, map of the US, and then what sort of density, right? That bar on the right tells you the density or the frequency of how many responses we got for each of those states. You can see Washington was very vocal. And ultimately, right, what we were wanting to ask was what was most important to them about food safety. They said that they cared first and foremost about human health and hygiene, right? About making sure that their employees know how to practice food safety principles in their environment at work. This was followed by worker training. So how do we train or teach people how to do this? Sanitation, which is all about making sure that the environment that you produce that food in is safe. And then traceability, which is kind of a new concept. But this really involves being able to find your food product in the event that there's a food safety issue. So you might have seen in the news that sometimes there's recalls or outbreaks linked to things like romaine lettuce, right? Traceability is that concept that helps that farmer go, okay, someone bought it from the grocery store. Can I tell if the lettuce they bought was mine, right? And then can I tell who else bought it? That's kind of what that concept means. But a fun part about this research, I think, is that we also asked these farmers, their bosses, right, or upper management, what they thought were the most important food safety priorities, right, to see if these 2 things match. And really, except for sanitation, right, in this one area of the operation, we found that their priorities were very different. This was interesting to us because what it revealed was that For the people with their boots on the ground who are actually doing the work to make and sell safe food, they were more concerned about safety from an immediate impact standpoint, right? How does this help us day to day? For those who were in upper management, and so in charge of food safety across the entire operation, maybe even across the whole US, they were much more concerned about what we don't know about food safety, right? The things that science doesn't yet have answers to. So now that we kind of know what they say they care about, does this actually match up with what they know when we ask them? And so this slide talks about another study that we did, and we published this in an extension article. So we surveyed about 240 food safety professionals here in Virginia at all different levels of the food industry, and we checked their food safety knowledge before and after we did these food safety training events. We did this first and foremost because we wanted to ask, right, did they learn anything, right? Did we do a good job in teaching them something, right? And so if their knowledge did change, was it because they learned more, right? Did that knowledge go up or did it go down? Did we somehow confuse them, right, and make it worse? Then one of the things that we did was we dug into the data and we asked, okay, so then which concepts did they understand better after the training and which ones did they not, right? Which ones did they understand worse, right? Where were we not helpful? And then we also wanted to know what about the training confused them, what was hard for them to know. But the last thing they did, the part that we think is the most valuable, is we then ranked each of those concepts to figure out which of them were the most important or the highest priority things for us to focus on educating people about. Because you'll find, right, there's lots of things that we can teach people, but we want to hit the most important things, the things that are most confusing for them, that have the highest impact first. So we figured this out by focusing on the concepts that had both the lowest change in knowledge and the lowest overall understanding. And so you can see now in this kind of picture on the right side, what we found. And what we're focusing on now in my lab, we're focusing now on helping people learn with our research and with our education projects about food safety hazards, right? So these are the things that could be in food that are not safe to eat. And then we're also teaching them corrective actions, which are things that you can do to make food safe to eat. Right, but how do we do this, right? The food supply chain is incredibly long and complex and convoluted. In recent years, we've heard it termed the food supply web to try to communicate just how tricky it is to know how all these pieces fit together. And so I want to talk a little bit on these last couple slides about how my lab, how the Ham Fam, how we work to help producers at every level of the food supply chain try to make food safe. So the first thing that we do is we do microbiology research related to food processing. We do food safety research all about what are the things that we do that can make food safer. And we do this by focusing on 3 areas for the most part, right? Things change. We like to stay nimble. But primarily, we focus on new ingredients or process technologies that have the potential to make food safer. We also talk about cleaning and sanitizing things that we can do to make the environments that we produce food in safer to make food in. And then we also do something that I think is really fun, which is we look at the population dynamics of the different types of microorganisms that are in a food processing environment. And we look at how they interact together to either make it safer to produce food there, or maybe a little bit harder. So for anybody who has heard or is aware of probiotics or prebiotics, right? Those are things that you can eat to make your gut microbiome happier, right? Able to produce the vitamins, the minerals, all those pleasant side effects that can make your life healthier and increase your well-being. We can do something really similar with food processing environments as well, right? The microorganisms that live and in their own way work in these spaces, we can try to understand what their different components or the different ratios of those are and how we can kind of manipulate that so that we have fewer food safety outbreaks and fewer recalls so that the food that's out there on the market, we can feel all more confident in the fact that it's safe to consume. Then once we do that research, we focus on sharing that science, that new knowledge with the public through lots of different resources. Sometimes they're hard copy written resources that you can print out and take with you. And those often spend a lot of time talking about how to produce safe food. What are the practical things that you do? We also will provide that technical assistance, that one-on-one help to producers when they run into issues, right? Because anyone who's been on a farm knows nothing goes according to plan, right? The first time. Unfortunately, when you're growing food out in the environment happens. And so we spend a lot of time helping people make decisions rooted in the science of food safety, so that when they sell that food and they sell that out into the community, it's still going to be safe to eat. And then the last thing that we do is we give trainings to people to provide that specialized instruction about why food safety is important, and then also how it can be applied in any operation, right? So food safety is something that anybody can do, that everybody has a role to play in. And we spend a lot of time trying to communicate that to people as well. And I want to say, contrary to what the pictures show, I am not a one-person operation. I just unfortunately only have pictures of myself. I am very fortunate to get to run a laboratory of 5 young scientists who are growing in their capacity, both as researchers, right, how to create that new knowledge, but also as science communicators every single day. I'm very proud of them. I share more about what we do, what my students are doing on our social media pages. You can see those. Our handles are for Twitter, X, and Instagram are on that slide. But if you're ever in Blacksburg, you're always welcome to come by the office. I also will happily respond to emails, even if I'm a bit slow. I'm working on getting faster at that. Feel free to bug me if I'm not responding quick enough. And I'll leave these up just for a little bit if anybody wants to write them down or look us up. But I'm also happy now I'd really like to answer questions if anybody has any. I really appreciate everybody's time and the opportunity to get to speak with everybody today. I'm so looking forward to getting to chat with you all. But yeah, I'll leave this up and stop sharing here in a bit so that I can see everybody. But
we'll pose some questions here, I'm sure, from the membership, Alexis, but I did want to alert everyone that Alexis is a member of Farmers. All of my kids and my husband, when I joined, by heavens, they all came in with me. So all 5 of us Hamiltons came in pretty much together. So she's one of our very own, truly, presenting today. So
wonderful.
Alexa, did you see that you have a, let me go back up, please.
Fellow Virginian?
Yes, Lisa.
Yes, I did.
Did you
Lee, hi.
Hi, it's nice to meet you, Dr. Hamilton.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. I live in Radford now, very close to Radford University.
Yep, I know. I spent my college years there. And quite a few of those weekends were actually at Virginia Tech, you might imagine.
Oh, yeah, sure. Football games.
Yep.
It's wonderful to have you. Thank you for being here. Always nice to see a fellow Virginian on the line.
So Alexis, just to bring it around full circle there, remember when I had told you I'd worked a year on an app and it got an AIR, and I was fighting for the 5th great grandmother because I just thought I had to vindicate that woman. It was Lee's sister down in Chattanooga that corroborated with me, and the 2 of us did an analysis, and that's how we beat them at their game. And she's now in. Yeah. So it just all of us are interconnected.
Y'all can see where I get it then. That's really all food safety research is finding a way to beat microbes at their game. So
I'm going to take a couple of photographs right now.
Oh, glasses off.
Just an FYI, photo time.
Do you want candid or do you want posed?
I want whatever you are.
Just act happy.
Colleen, you back on? There is Colleen. Got it. Okay. Thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Colleen. Appreciate it. Okay, we've got quite a few of you.
There's Kevin.
This was an informative, really good program, Alexa. Thank you so much. Are there any comments or any questions for her?
You know, I do have one question. It's kind of a funny question, but I've often wondered about insecticides that farmers, I know they use a lot,
Yeah.
But if a person just sprayed a little bit
Mhm.
on the outside of a crop, can you really wash it off?
Yeah, it's a great question. And unfortunately a complicated one. So a couple of things that I want to kind of say on this. When it comes, so I think what you're talking about, right, is pesticide residues, right? Even if we just put a little bit on there, what's the likelihood that that's actually coming off? Because if the whole reason we put that on there is to kill pests, what's that doing to us? Right? We don't want that on there. And so there's a couple things that I want to mention. When it comes to those types of chemistries or those types of products that are produced and that are approved for use in agriculture, they are approved for very specific uses. So they can only be used at specific time frames, on specific parts of the plant, different areas of the operation, all bearing in mind that the FDA, the EPA, all of these government institutions whose job it is to make sure that the food is safe and the chemistries we use in food production are safe, they do regular testing and research to show that are these products safe to use? And then if so, if some of them is left over, is a small enough amount of that left over that it won't be harmful to us. So anything that's approved and that has that label, people are only allowed to use it the way that the government says it's safe to use. However, right, we know that things happen and sometimes people don't follow that label. And when they don't, they're not allowed to sell that product to be consumed because they haven't used that product safely. The other thing that I want to mention about the way that the government does this research, and this is kind of a thing we all kind of, myself included, I think all scientists really think a lot about. When we do research, all of our studies are typically structured to understand what's going to happen in general to the population as a whole. We don't spend a lot of time trying to predict what's going to happen to one individual person because we're trying to do a little bit of research to help everybody. And so what that means is that, hooray, we're doing research that has the potential to help everyone. It also means that the research really doesn't often tell us whether it's going to work for every individual person. And so it's something that some researchers have tried to fix by doing some of these modeling based approaches. And what they do is they take all this data that we've done to help the entire population, and they build models to help predict whether or not it's going to be safe for one particular individual. Unfortunately, that's not what I do, but I do try to keep up with it. So a little bit of a convoluted answer, but that's what came to mind for me.
We don't use pesticide, but I know the food you buy is just a question mark.
Absolutely. Well, and so much so that I think it's the FDA. I'll have to check and confirm. Maybe it's the EPA. There's a working group that puts out every year. I think they call it the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And so every year they report on which foods have the lowest amount of pesticide residues, and they call those the Clean 15. And then they report on which ones have the highest levels of residues, and they call those the Dirty Dozen. I'll try to find a link to this year's one, and I'll try to share that so that can go out to everybody if you're interested.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question.
While other people are thinking about questions, I'm going to give 21 supplementals. So if I call your name, you get a supplemental as a gift for coming today to our Zoom. Let's start with Renee. Renee, you may have one. Davina, Davina, you can have one. Alexa.
Thank you.
You get one.
We'll give Cindy one.
Sydney is the capital of New South Wales and the most populous city in Australia.
Colleen, how would you like to have a supplemental? And Debbie, and Doris, and Kevin, and Lee, and Nancy, and Pat, and Peggy, and Shelley, and I'm not finished. And Mary Stevens, Suzanne, Carol, Jude, Pat, Ruth, and Susan.
Good.
There's my number. So I don't always do this, but I think this was a really special Zoom, and I appreciate each one of you signing on. And Alexa, You just did phenomenal. I learned a lot from you.
It
And
was absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
thank you, Pat. Do we have anyone else have comments about it? Yes, well, you are superb.
Awesome.
If there-
Alexis, honey, thank you.
Yeah,
Big
thanks for
thank you.
having me. Thanks so
I have
much.
a question.
Oh, great. Cindy, please.
Wait, well, actually, I loved your presentation, but it's about that I saw that you went to WSU.
Yeah.
And so I'm on the far west side. I'm over on the more of the coast side, on the peninsula.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yes, it absolutely is.
Are you up near Anacortes and some of the San Juan?
No, south of that,
Okay.
I'm in Paulsbo, Washington, which
Okay.
is well, it's one short ferry boat ride from Seattle, but then you
Yeah.
have to drive through Bainbridge.
Yeah.
But if you do that, we're the first little village you're going to go through. But anyway, I have been trying my best to get a hold of people at WSU
Mhm.
to let them know that we have these wonderful scholarships.
Great.
And I have yet to ever get any response. And I didn't know if you might, I don't want to take up anybody's time here, but if you could email me or call me,
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Boy, do I have the person for you.
Good.
Actually, it's a new food safety produce extension specialist. She's based in Prosser, so she's out where I was when I was there at WSU. Her name's she's Dr. Claire Murphy. She just moved out there this summer, so she's new in the job. She's really eager. She's really great. I got to work with her. Fun fact: she did her PhD here at Virginia Tech, so we kind of switched places.
Right.
But she's wonderful. I'd be happy to connect you both. I'm sure she'd be.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And my husband is also graduated from WSU. So
Amazing. Yeah, I think Lee said that her husband was in Puyallup. Yeah,
So
I got to.
Do we need to say go Cougars just for a
Yeah, go
minute?
Cougs, right?
Cougs.
yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Go
All
right, there we
Cougs.
go.
What can you
Okay.
say?
Whew, okay.
Yeah,
Yay.
fun fact, when I was out there, I brought my mom with me when I was thinking about, right, should I go out here and do this? And my mom brought this beautiful purple folder to put all of our travel information in. And she was like, it's for Washington. And I had to say, well, that's University of Washington. It's not
Right.
Washington University. And so now we're red.
Yes, yes. Oh, yes.
No purple. No
Got to
husband.
do that. Yes.
Yeah.
No, we lived in Virginia for quite a few years from time to time. So I know the college, where you're at. So
Wow.
nice. And thank you again.
Yes.
So, okay, I got a picture of your email, so I'll send you an email.
Perfect.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. And I'll connect you with Dr. Murphy. She's great.
Okay, thank you.
And Carol, yes, I did say your name for a supplemental. So while we have a couple of moments left, if you don't mind, Debbie, could you please take a moment and explain the new forms, the great new forms, and how they're available and when they'll be on the website?
Sure. The long form application has been updated in the Facebook groups, and I already sent them over to Dan, not they, it, to be updated. And what we did was we changed the default size of the font being used on all the input fields so that it was easier for Janisu and Davina to read. Some of the fields we were trying to maximize the amount of characters that we could put on each field, and it ended up shrinking the font a lot. So hopefully that's cleared everything up, and it'll be much more user-friendly for them to work with. And I'm currently working on the Farmer's Wife supplemental application and making the same changes to that. And I sent a test in yesterday, and Janisu and Davina were happy with it. So that'll get put up on Facebook and the web. within a day or so. And then I'll progress through the rest of the applications and make the changes where we need them.
All
The other change that we did make was we reduced the number. There's a lot of stuff on these forms, especially the long form. And one of the things we did was we took out the last 3 generations for lineage because they really weren't going to be used. So that freed up a little bit of real estate and let us spread things out and allocate more space for some of the fields.
we're trying to streamline and we don't want to make any additional changes. Hopefully this will be the last one for a year or two, but Dave's so gracious about going in and making any additions or corrections or changes for us to make the forms better for each and every one of you. So if you notice that a form needs some tweaking, please let me know so we can review it and check it out. Davina, would you please give us our numbers? And then yes, Renee, I'll come back to you.
1,486 members. And the supplementals are 1,905. It's amazing.
Wow.
We're growing with these numbers, and I'm still working on the farmer wife supplementals, and we have over 200 now.
Well, you just got another one. I just sent it in.
Wow.
Yay.
Davina, tell them about your Christmas present from one member yesterday.
Ah, yes, 30. I can't imagine the time she spent on that. I mean,
I'm so jealous.
unbelievable. 30, and it's taking the time. I mean, Pat, yours is bottom of the stack to get to yours. I mean, it's like, wow, this is really fun. Loving doing it. 30 more supplemental wives. It's good.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, you're going to have a deadline, and it's the last day of November for your free supplemental. I need to do this for Treasure National to keep it in the same month.
Mhm.
So Renee, I'll go back to you. You had your hand up.
Now I forgot what I was going to ask you. I already went on to the you told me the supplemental numbers and I got all excited. It'll probably come to me later. It wasn't anything really big and important, I don't think. It must not have been because I lost it. So anyway, sorry, Alexis. I had something, but
That's okay.
it's all gone.
It's all right. I know where to find you, so not too bad.
Yeah, I know, right?
Any comments? Anyone have anything that you want to say or ask about farmers?
Or things I can do to make it better presentation. Always happy to that for those comments as well.
It was outstanding.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
outstanding.
You
Well,
did it.
there
Great
are
job.
additional comments. It is 2:07. We've got about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. Perfect timing, Alexa, perfect timing. And for each and every one of you, thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. And those veterans that we have here, raise your hand up if you are a veteran. Okay. Thank you again for your, we appreciate you so much. And
Pat, I have a quick question. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Sure.
Go ahead. I thought you were done. Oh, wait.
no, go ahead.
Did you get mail, Pat?
Yeah.
From the society?
In the last 20 minutes, no,
And like within the last day or two?
I don't think so.
You want to tell her what you sent her?
All of the military tribute for the for NSDOAF that are on our tribute wall have a gift coming. And so I mailed them all last week. And
I have not seen an email. No.
no, not email. It's
Oh.
snail mail.
No snail mail. No.
Oh,
But remember,
would be-
yesterday was a
The
holiday.
holiday, right?
yeah. But
So
then it's
that's
supposed to
gonna
be there
affect it.
before. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, be looking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moan. Grown moan. Okay. That's all. I did remember what I was going to say, ma'am, if I can have one more moment.
Okay.
Everyone, don't forget, when you have the opportunity, you can use short forms instead of those long ones when you're doing supplementals and so on and so forth. It just helps, especially if you have a large group of forms you need to send in because you have a lot of farmer wives that you haven't paid tribute to yet,
Mm.
you can always have the potential of using short forms if you're building off another app. So just a thought.
They're easier. Yes.
And we are starting to review some DNA applications, supplementals. So we'll keep you informed in the future on that. It is a challenge. So sending best wishes for a phenomenal Thanksgiving. Davina and I think Thanksgiving is every day. We're thankful for each day. So sending farmer smiles to each and every one of you. And like I said in the last board meeting, this is not just a society. This is a family. So thank you. Happy day. Wishing you all well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Dennis, Sue,
Bye,
I'm gonna
Alexis.
give you a
Thanksgiving.
call.
Happy turkey day. I'm serving prime rib the first time.
Woo!
Mm.
Dennis, Sue, I'm gonna give you a call.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Can't get up here.